The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're coming to you live from the Warner Center. We're going to do Jargon of the Day in just a couple of minutes. We just wanted you to get excited about it, right? But we're coming to you live from the Warner Center, and this is the home for Autism Live. It's also the home for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I want to say out the gate that I know I talk about CARD a lot, the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and I talk about skills a lot. And I don't mean to make the whole show about that ever, but I'm an autism parent. That's what my credential is sitting here. This is why I'm here. I'm not an expert in autism, but I am a CARD mom. You can't separate that from me. My child was treated at CARD. He was diagnosed at 2.5, started services at CARD when he was 3. He is now 14.5, and I'm going to try to talk less about him, except that he's fabulous. He is absolutely fabulous at a college prep, high school, completely included, at and above grade level, and he's hilarious. We watched a movie with him last night, and I just he just had comments that he made while we were watching the movie that had me in hysterics laughing. My kid is hilarious. He has such a great sense of humor, which everybody told me was not possible, and believe me, I cried tears over that. Because I had expectations that I was going to have a child who was hilarious, and guess what I do? I'm so grateful to CARD, and so I'll try not to say too much about that, but I do love me some CARD, and I'm not going to apologize for that, but I'll try to tone it down a little bit. Okay. We got a great show for you guys here today. 2 hours live, lots of different topics that we're going to be talking about here on the show. We have a new segment that we're starting this morning where we're going to check in with more experts. We have Dr. Grampiche on Wednesdays when we can get her. We have Evelyn Kung on the show when we can get her. But we just aren't getting enough experts to answer your questions. So I've lined up a bunch more experts to come on Thursdays, which is going to be a great thing. So that's going to be in just a few minutes. But we like to start the show by reminding you that the show's meant to be interactive. We want to hear from you. We want to know your thoughts, your feelings, your concerns, your questions, your rants. Bring it all. This is a safe space. You can express yourself however you want to. I don't get the chance to talk about everything you guys talk about, but as we want to include you, because it's not even about including you. You're as much a part of this show as anybody else is, right? So Samantha's going to show you some of the different ways that you can connect. I'm going to remind you while she does that autism-live.com is our homepage. When you go there, lots of things to do. The show will play there on the computer screen if you just click on the little triangle. That will start either the live show or the most recently recorded live show. If you want to see more shows, oh my gosh, we have a library of shows on our YouTube channel. You can see 100 of the most recent episodes on that Autism-Live if you go to the memo tab up in the upper left-hand corner. Now, there is a live feature to the side of the computer screen on autism-live.com. There's a series of white boxes. If you will put your cursor in the one that says your question, all you have to do is type and hit enter. That's it. You don't have to log in. You don't have to put in a username and remember a password and put it someplace and then forget where you put it. You don't have to fill out the little thing to prove that you're not a robot. Love that. You don't have to try to figure out the messed up letters. Don't you hate that? You don't have to do any of that. And there's no cost. Everything we do here is free because I love that, don't you? And because it's about information. You know what I always say? We hold hands. Si se puede, we can do this together, but we must hold hands. I can't do this alone. I know. I know, I tried. It didn't work. In any case, so write into us there. You can also write into us on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and Periscope and all those other places. But if you want to be completely anonymous, then you write it on the live feature, and then nobody knows who asked the question, not even me. And we don't, if you decide to put in personal information, like let's say, you say, Shannon, I want those studies that you talked about on last week's show. Can you email them to me, and you give me your email address? Then I don't put that on the screen. Isn't that a great deal? I do like to remind you at the start of the show, even though I already sort of mentioned it, we have lots of experts that are on the show. I'm not one of them. I am an autism parent, a proud autism parent who is in your corner and wants to empower you with choices that help you figure out what's appropriate for you, whether you're a parent, a teacher, practitioner, or of course, if you are a person who's on the autism spectrum. And by the way, you might be all of those. You could be a parent, a practitioner, a teacher, and be on the spectrum. How about that? But we welcome all of you. We know that this is not a one-size-fits-all. What works for one person may need to be vastly different for another person. So we want to help connect you. But just remember, lots of experts. I'm not one of them. I'm just like a really good friend who cares deeply about making sure you get connected to the resources that can help you. That's my deal. And I enjoy it. Nava's watching. Nava, hello. Come visit us sometime soon, would you please? We have lots to talk about, Nava. Okay, in any case, we like to start every morning with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym, and we try to figure out, what are they talking about? And why does my head have to hurt with these terms, right? The thing with jargon is meant to save time and be more specific, right? So we can't just ignore it. We have to learn it a little bit at a time because it can be very overwhelming. So we do jargon of the day. We start with whatever the term is. We give you the actual definition so we get used to some of those crazy words they use. I like to make fun of the actual definition. It's a hobby. And then we give you a working definition, something that's a little bit watered down and makes the BCBAs break out into hives, but helps us to understand in our path along the way to learn these terms so that we can save time and be more specific, right? Okay, our term today, because we're at the beginning of the year, we're recycling some, and I got to get my Carol Merrill right. I always get it wrong. Generalization. There we go. All right, now this is one of those crazy words because we feel like I know what a generalization is, right? When people say, oh, it's a sweeping generalization. But when we're talking about autism, that's not what we're talking about. Not the same word at all. So within the realm of autism, let's look at what the definition for generalization is. The occurrence of relevant behavior under different non-training conditions, for example, across subjects, settings, people, behaviors, and/or time, without the scheduling of the same events in those conditions. Bum, ba-da-bum. That's one that makes you want to light your hair on fire and run out into the street. What? What does that even mean? The occurrence of relevant behavior under different non-training conditions. What? Let's put it in plain English, shall we? So, working definition, generalization. Being able to apply what has been learned in new ways or situations that were never taught. Okay, so think about it this way. There's such a vast world of things to learn that it can be overwhelming. I remember when they started teaching my son, and I was like, he's so far behind. Like, how is he ever going to, and we started with labels, and I was like, okay, great, but how are we ever going to get caught up? There's got to be a tipping point. Like, how is he going to get to the point? Well, really, generalization is teaching somebody how to learn, how to take, if I teach you A and I teach you B, are you able to put them together and arrive at C all on your own? And I didn't have to teach you C. Because when you get to that, boom, right? Now the world is your oyster. Whenever somebody is working with an individual with autism and trying to teach them a new skill, generalization is what you're working for. Not just to teach the skill, but to be able to apply the skill in every scenario that could possibly happen. Two quick examples that I love to do. If you're teaching somebody the color red, right? Oh my gosh, when you think about how vast the subject of red is, because you're not just teaching one shade of red. How many shades of red are there, right? But not only that, red can be a flat color, or it can be something that's 3D. It can be in the shape of a puppy, or it can be a house. And how do we get that whole concept into somebody so that no matter what happens and red pops up, it can be a brick red and we can say, what color is that? And they say it's red. It can be, somebody's face turning red and they understand that that's red. Okay, so there are lessons designed and a way in which to teach them that plans for generalization. The other big example that I always like to use, because it's one that we all will encounter at some time, is potty training. And you can tell whether you're working with somebody who knows their stuff, because if they plan for every single time a lesson is planned, there should be a plan for generalization. And I run into parents all the time. We know that potty training is something that we can do with all of our kids, that takes a different amount of time, different amount of input, but we can get to potty training unless there is a medical issue that prevents it. Potty training is a behavior. And if there's nothing preventing it medically, we can get there, right? It may take longer with some kids, but we can get there. But I see all the time parents go, well, we got potty trained, but he can only go to the bathroom at home. We went to my mother's house and he didn't go to the bathroom for a week and I'm sick with worry, okay? And this makes me frustrated because it was a generalization issue that didn't get dealt with in the very, very beginning. Proper way to teach potty training is to train the individual first with one toilet. You set everything up so that everything's cool with that toilet. But as soon as they have it in that toilet, you got to move them to another toilet. And maybe, you taught them in the downstairs bathroom, now you're going to use the upstairs bathroom. And within days, you want to take them to a friend's house and have them use the toilet. And within days of that, you want to take them to Target or Walmart or wherever and have them use the toilet there, because we're not just teaching them how to use one toilet. Very early on, we have to introduce those other toilets so that they see, ooh, this is something that happens here and it happens here. Because every toilet's going to be just a little bit different, right? Some flush with a button, and some flush with a handle, and some automatically flush. And in Chicago O'Hare Airport, it lines the toilet itself. We want for the child to be able to go to the bathroom no matter where they are in the world. They might go to a baseball game and it's a porta potty, right? So we got to plan for that early on. And if you had somebody potty train your child that didn't plan for that, you need to ask questions. Are we planning for generalization before every single lesson? Because generalization is where it's at. I always say it's that My Fair Lady moment where you say, by George, I think he or she has got it, right? That's what we want to get to with everything that we're teaching, and that is called generalization. It's the keys to the kingdom. Ask your ABA provider when you introduce a new lesson, what's our plan for generalization? And they should have it right there. If they don't, I would ask some questions, because that's one of the hallmarks of really good ABA. All right, moving on. We always have a question of the day. And our question today, and this is for you, what would you like to learn how to do? We as human beings, we all have things that we look at and go, ooh, I'd like to be able to do that. I think when we get a little bit older, we get a little bit hung up on, well, I might be too old for that. I always think about Regis Philbin, who decided, I think when he was in his 60s, that he wanted to learn how to play the piano because he was doing concerts. And he said, gee, I feel like it's a little late. I'm in my 60s and, am I really going to get to the place where I can play in a concert? Because that's what I want to do. I don't want to just play at home. I want to be able to accompany myself in a concert venue. And so he started playing the piano, and a lot of people scoffed at him. But, he has been playing the piano in concerts for years now. So it's never too late. But what would you like to learn how to do? I am a former teacher, and the process of learning, I just think it's a fascinating process. I love to learn new things. I had said to my husband the other day, I gotta learn something new. I'm feeling a little stale. I gotta learn, even if it's to learn a new song in the car. something we did as teenagers all the time, right? Radio played something, friend played something, and you learn the new song. It's good for your brain. We always need to be learning something. So ask yourself, it might as well be something reinforcing, right? What would you like to learn? And then I want to ask you to note, as you begin the process of learning it, what kind of learning style do you have? Because it's something we're going to be talking about in the next couple of months. How do you learn versus how somebody else learns, and all the different ways of learning, and what do we know about what's effective? We're going to be taking that apart in the next couple of weeks, but you can learn anything. Really, in this day and age, when there's tutorials on YouTube and they're free, you can learn almost really anything. Okay, we always have a topic of the week, and I love this topic of the week. It's called stinking thinking. We all have it. We all have these tapes that play in our head that say they're limiting beliefs, right? That say, oh, you can't do that. I can't do that. She can't do that. He can't do that, right? And we talk all the time on the show about what you think becomes what you say, becomes what you do, becomes what you are, right? And if we can weed the garden of our brain and take some of the stinking thinking out, sometimes you don't even notice that it's become a part of your environment and you're thinking something that's a limiting belief and not even realizing that you're doing it. But if you stop for a second and think, when I said to you, you can learn anything, did anything in your brain pop up and go, no, can't do that? Can't do that. Just the other day, I love this day and age we live in, and videos pop up on your Facebook, and a friend had posted a video of a woman who is a pole dancing champion. I didn't even know there was such thing, okay? And this woman didn't start pole dancing until she was 59, and she did it because of impending osteoporosis. She was losing bone mass, so she decided to become a pole dancer. Because, I think to myself, well, I can do anything, but I'm never going to be a ballerina, right? Well, the truth is that if I really wanted to be a ballerina, even at this age, I could do it. I'm not going to be a ballerina in the New York City Ballet, but if I wanted to be a ballerina, I could. I don't want to be a ballerina. But if there are things that I want to do, I can. So I'm going to ask you to evaluate your stinking thinking. What's holding you back? What are you telling yourself that isn't true, that is limiting and is limiting you, is limiting those around you? What have you got going on? Let's weed, at least pull things out and look at it and go, is this useful to me? If it's not, you can compost it, right? Get rid of it. Stinking thinking. We're all guilty of it every single day, but if we weed, could be good. All right. Moving on. We've got a great show for you. As I mentioned, we're starting a new series this morning, and we've got somebody who's never been on the show before, Karen Nolte. She's going to answer a couple of questions that you guys have been sending in. Then we've got Bonnie Yates, special education attorney. She's going to answer a bunch of questions that you guys have sent in. And then a little bit later on the show, we have Maya Watkins is going to be with us from Zip Zap Zop Enrichment. Yes, I said that. Zip Zap Zop Enrichment. If you've ever played theater games, Zip Zap Zop is a theater game that is great for a group of kids on the spectrum, not on the spectrum, because it's about focus and attention in a really fun environment. And they don't just play Zip Zap Zop at Zip Zap Zop Enrichment. They play a lot of theater games, and they do improv. And so Maya is, and they're based here in Los Angeles, but Maya's going to talk a little bit about why she thinks this is so important and how you can bring something like this to where you live. So important. We hear time and time again, even from Dr. Temple Grandin, about how theater and theater games can help our kiddos get that social piece that's so hard for them. So that, plus which hopefully we're going to have time for our mindfulness moment and our autism in the classroom moment. So all of that and much more coming up after these messages. Stick with us.
The pain of comparison. Yes, I know it well. It is never fun to compare your child with other children because that's not easy when your child has a difference, such as being on the autism spectrum. And if you have a child with autism, we have the joy of comparing our child not only to neurotypical children, but also to other children with autism. You have to remember that your child is your child. We love them because they're our children, and their job is to be a child, and our job is just to parent and love them and help them as much as we can. When we hear about some child doing something that our child isn't doing yet or may not do in the long run, it's pretty difficult. And I can tell you, milestones are a hard one. The graduations, the birthday parties, you have to remember you can get through this. One of the best ways to do it, fun. You have to have a group of safe people that you can go to, hang out, that love your child, do something fun together. One of the best solutions is to kind of think about where we are then. Maybe it's time to kind of look at a different situation or a different intervention. So you might look at a different school, you might look at something you've never tried before to be a therapy or a biomedical intervention for your child. Also, disability has always been seen as a form of wisdom in some of the world's great faiths and religions and philosophies. They have a lot to teach us. Our children are beautiful people. They affect people different ways, and they show us really what human nature is all about. So when you feel that pain of comparison, just know that your child is a special person. And I'm sitting here to tell you, there are children out there, girls and boys, young adults, older adults, who do things that people never thought they would do. They're going to surprise you. You will have those moments. So be assured that your time is coming to be that one that everyone's happy for.
Hi guys, welcome back to Smarty. It's February, and for this month, we have made a template for you. You can find it on facebook.com/autism-live, and this activity works on your child's pincer grasp. So let's get started. The materials you'll be needing are scissors, a hole puncher, a glue stick, shoelace, cardstock, and our template that you can print from facebook.com/autism-live. First, I'm going to take my template and glue it to cardstock. And the reason I'm using a glue stick is so that it doesn't ripple, because if you use the wet glue, it's going to make it all lumpy. Once I have my template glued to my cardstock, I'm going to take my scissors and cut out the heart. Now that I have my heart cut out, I'm going to cut out the holes with the hole puncher. This is where your child's going to take their shoelace and start threading through it. Now that I've put all the hole punches through the template, now I'm going to get my kiddo to come over and take the shoelace and start sewing the outside of the heart. Shoelaces are great because they have the tip already, making it easier for the child to thread it through the holes, and they come in great different colors and patterns. As you can see, we found some really festive hearts. Here's my completed Valentine. Now it makes sense, right? I love you so very much. As you can see, the child has a lot of opportunity to work on their pincer grasp and find mold as they sew around the heart. I hope you enjoyed doing this with your child. Until next time, craft on, guys. Bye.
Can you see me flying by your side?
Welcome back to Autism Live. We have a new segment here on the show where we're going to be introducing you to a lot of different autism experts, a lot of them at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, allowing you to get to know them and to have them answer some of the vast number of questions that we just aren't getting to in the rest of our segments on the show. So for our inaugural voyage to do this, I want to welcome Karen Nolte to the show. Karen, thank you for being our first guest.
Great, Shannon. I'm glad to be on.
Well, we're thrilled to have you. And Karen, could you just tell us briefly what it is that you do here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders?
Sure. I actually have two different roles here. I am the research manager, and in that role, I work on research projects to help support learning more about the best strategies and supports to help our children and adults with autism. And my other role is clinical supervisor, and in that role, I have a caseload of clients, and I support their teams in terms of building the plans as the BCBA on the case and supporting parents in parent training and training the therapists on the team.
Wonderful. And for our card families, they might see you in the Long Beach office, but from time to time, you also spend some time here at corporate headquarters. Is that correct?
Exactly, that's right.
Well, we so appreciate your service and we thank you for being with us this morning. We have a couple of questions for you. I'm going to launch right into this first one. My 5-year-old that is in kindergarten is having difficulty answering questions about his day. If I ask him, he will always say, "I played today." He asks questions and labels, but more abstract things like talking about his school day is very hard. I do try to ask specific things like, what book did you read? What letter did you learn? Who did you sit next to at lunch? He can answer who he sat with at lunch. He usually tells me if someone is mean or gets frustrated with writing. So I'm very happy about that. What are some things that we can do to help this more conversational speech of answering questions develop? It's a great question.
It is, and I see this issue with a lot of my clients. And it's something where he's starting to answer some of the questions that the parent's asking, which is really great. And I would say kudos to this parent for asking specific questions, because that's usually my first piece of advice, is to make sure that you're really focusing in so that the kiddo knows what answer you want. And I would also suggest to this parent to try and ask questions that he or she already knows the answer to. And that's really tricky, but it helps in being able to prompt the right answer so that you're helping your child learn how to respond appropriately to these questions. And you can ask the teacher to send you some notes about what happened in the school day to help with this. That's probably the best way to know what's going on in the school day. Otherwise, I find that oftentimes our kiddos have this issue because they just don't have a strong memory skill set. So I would suggest working on his memory in terms of recalling past events, and you can do this in any other context, just throughout the day, on the weekend, when he's home from school. And you would start by asking questions about what happened a few minutes ago. Who did you play games with? Who won trouble? Things like that. And you would, again, want to ask questions you know the answer to so you can help your child get to the right answer. And then you would gradually ask those questions about events that happened longer and longer in the past. So about a half an hour ago, this morning, yesterday, and you would gradually build up that child's memory. The other thing that I think works for some kids is some kids find it fun to have a back and forth. So give him a chance to ask you questions about your day, and that might be helpful for him in getting this concept.
Karen, I love this answer. That was amazing. Thank you so much. And viewer, write back and let us know how that works out for you. I'm going to move on to the next question. Hello, I'm a pre-K intensive teacher for autistic 3 and 4-year-olds. I have one student that bites his nails obsessively. He chews on the ends of his fingers until they bleed. He does this all day long. Every time I look at him, his fingers are in his mouth. He also puts blocks, cars, and toys in his mouth and chews on them. What can I do to get him to stop this behavior?
So as a BCBA, the first thing that I would do is complete an FBA, or a functional behavior assessment, because before we can develop a treatment plan and a set of strategies, we need to know what the function is or why this child is biting and mouthing objects in his fingers. So that's something where, being in the school district, hopefully this teacher has access to a BCBA who can help provide this functional behavior assessment to figure out what the function is. And some potential results of that assessment could be maybe the child is doing this for a sensory reason. It just feels good internally. And in that case, we would want to look for replacement behaviors. So maybe giving that child a chewy tube or some jewelry to chew on instead of his fingers, or giving snacks like carrots and cucumbers that are crunchy and maybe give a little bit of that sensation instead of chewing. Another option might be that this behavior serves an attention function. So maybe the child's trying to get attention from others by biting his fingers and nails. And in that case, you would want to teach that kid to gain attention by tapping others. In the meantime, while you're waiting for an FBA, that functional behavior assessment, there are a couple things that you can do. What I would suggest is looking for times when the child isn't engaging in that mouthing and biting behavior. And it sounds like it's happening really often, so it might be hard to find those times, but maybe even if it's just snack time. Okay, his hands are out of his mouth when he's eating. That's something that you can build on and work on, and you would want to work on giving that child a lot of praise, a lot of reinforcement, a lot of good things when his hands aren't in his mouth, and then start building on those opportunities. Say, for example, the child doesn't put his fingers in his mouth when he's playing with blocks. You can give him blocks at other times and encourage that appropriate behavior if that's a time when his hands are out of his mouth.
Wonderful. Superlative advice. I'm loving this, Karen. And then I'm going to move on to this last question. Good morning. My 10-year-old nonverbal son is tall and strong. I really struggle with his refusals around changing his diaper, getting off the school bus, and even in and out of the car. It's really difficult to physically prompt him. He engages in self-injury and just doesn't move. We use first then, so first off the bus, then snack, but even that doesn't work. He's so strong. We have ABA therapy, but only 4 hours a week. I know he needs a lot more. How can I work through these? He has a PEX board, but it is not independent and means a lot. And she put that in caps of prompting.
This is a great question, and I really hope that you can get more ABA for your son. That would be really the best thing. In the meantime, again, a functional behavior assessment would be the first thing that I would do if I were the BCBA on the case to figure out what is the function, why is he engaging in that self-injury? It might be for a couple different reasons. But in the meantime, also give you some suggestions to help with the non-compliance. It sounds like your son really is trying to avoid some of these demands and directions that you're placing on him. So first of all, if you haven't done it already, I would suggest getting a visual schedule. So take pictures of all the different events in your son's day, and you would put them on a Velcro schedule, one at a time. So at the top, you might have eating snack, and then next you might put changing diaper, and then you might put watching TV. And this would be a good set of cues for him to know what's happening next. He might be resisting the next activity because he doesn't know what's going on. So that would be my first recommendation. Next, I would suggest breaking these tasks down into smaller steps. It might just be too hard to tell your son, okay, we're gonna go get on the bus. That might just be a really difficult, hard thing that he doesn't want to do. So you could try breaking this down by, okay, first we're gonna go to the door for a snack. And then next we're gonna walk down the driveway for a snack. And then we're going to wave to the school bus driver and then get a piece of snack. And then we're going to sit on the school bus and then get a piece of snack. So this might be something where you're already using those first then phrases, which is great, and you might need to break it down a little bit more so that your son is seeing more success and getting more reinforcement for each of the little steps of the process. An example for staying calm while his diaper is being changed might be, okay, first we're going to walk to the restroom and then you get a piece of snack. And then if you stand nicely or sit nicely, however you arrange diapering with him, then you get a piece of snack. Then we wash our hands, then you get snack. So really flood him with a lot more reinforcement, a lot more frequent reinforcement might make this more successful. And before you even start, you mentioned that you're using snacks. You might want to check and see what snacks he really is interested in that moment. You might think like, okay, my son loves chips, so I'm always going to use chips. But maybe on a given day or in a given moment, he might prefer something else. So always give him two choices. Hold up, okay, we have goldfish or chips. Which do you want today? And maybe put them directly in front of him so that he can point to which one he wants to work for. And my last thought would be maybe you can give him something during that transition to keep him occupied and busy. So while you're changing his diaper, give him a fidget spinner or a stress ball or some other physical item that can maybe distract him to help him get to that snack as the reinforcer you're trying to provide.
All wonderful advice, and I know that people wrote in, and I'm having a little bit of trouble getting the comments, but Samantha was trying to ferry some of them to me, excuse me. And I know that somebody wrote in and said visual schedule so amazing that it works for their child. And okay, Samantha just sent it to me because I might hold on one second. So Angie said our car trip was awful, but when we started the visual calendar, everything is great now. So great advice, Karen. Let me just say, you're a rock star. This was amazing. And we really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today and to answer these questions. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I'm glad I could help.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. And so thank you so much, Karen. I want to say to all the viewers too, continue to write in your questions. We're going to have a different expert on every Thursday and try to get to some of the backlog of questions that we don't get on Wednesday. You can be writing your questions into us in any of the different sites on Facebook, YouTube. You can email to me directly. You can send to our autism-live@gmail.com. And of course, you can write it in on the live feature. But you can see that was so, I love it when we have experts on the show who can answer these questions. And please follow up. If you like the advice, let us know how it went. We are going to take a short break, and I'm just checking time-wise. Hopefully, we're going to have a second to come back and talk a little bit about our mindfulness moment for this Thursday. Stick with us.
I know a cute little blue-eyed boy, and his name is Jack. Jack Riley. He got a big, warm, blue-eyed soul that makes your heart beat fast. Exciting. I say Jack, Jack, Jack is my buddy. Jack, Jack, Jack is my buddy. Everybody around is so down with Jack.
We had Lainey checked this week by the regional center, and they say no autism, but she does have a little expressive speech delay. Can you say up, please? Can you say please? Please. Good job. Mwah. Jack Riley a kiss. You want to? Oh, here she comes. Give him a kiss. Oh. That's so nice. Can you give him another kiss? Maybe a hug. Can you give Jack Riley a hug? Oh, Jack's giving you a hug. Didn't want to put my head in the sand and think because she's ahead of where Jack was that means she doesn't have any issues.
We're glad we did it. We did it just because our only experience with a child is autism, the A word. And so we didn't know what a typical child is like in our own home. And we're 99.99999% sure we have, now we have a typical example in our house. They're both extraordinary though. She actually has the perfect emotional makeup for a typical sister of a A-word brother. She, now that he used to knock her over and stuff, now when he starts to take a step toward her, she just stares at him and screams. Ah! It's hilarious. And he backs down. Can you say please? Please. Can you say thank you? Okay. Can you say thank you again? Thank you. Can you say dad? Can you say anti-disestablishmentarianism?
Where's my waffles, Daddy?
You want to make you a new one?
Yes.
Can you look me in the eye and say, yes please, Dad?
Yes, please.
No, you're not looking at me.
Yes, please, Dad.
Okay, I'll make you another waffle.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I want to take just a second to acknowledge, Carrie, you're watching, and Tina, you're watching. I absolutely love that. And Allie B. Griff is watching. So wonderful. And thank you for sharing with your group. And Frashetti is watching. A whole bunch of people watching here. We absolutely love that. You love, and Allie likes the watered down definition. Well, you know, we have to do that. So anyway, in any case, I also wanted to say, Candace said, my son is 7 and the visual first then schedule works for us. That's wonderful. Okay. Time for our mindfulness moments on Thursday. We try to have a moment for mindfulness. We know that mindfulness helps for everyone to reduce stress. And for those of us in the autism community, we also know statistically we have more than the average stress. And that if we don't manage it, it can really mess things up. We've already got enough to deal with. I personally have gone through the process of having extra health things because of stress. And so I'm trying to be more mindful and learn mindfulness along the way and share when I can. So today's tip, I know we talk a lot about how to meditate in different ways, because not all of us can find that happy, blissful white noise moment by just sitting in the lotus position and, going, okay, I'm going to meditate now. For a lot of us, that's a far away thing. So one of the practices that is particularly helpful for people who are having a hard time meditating is to find some element of nature and to focus on that. It's a form of meditation. It can be a leaf. It can be a pine cone. It can be, the other day I had one of those, in my neighborhood we have these little spiky balls that fall off of trees that Jem used to love when he was a child. And to set something like that, it could be a flower. And if you don't have nature right by you, you can download a picture of a flower and just take a moment, look at the picture, breathing regularly, taking deep inhales, deep exhales, right? And look at the flower. Notice the things about the flower. When we take a second, and I'm really just talking about a minute to 2 minutes, not 20 minutes, right? But just a minute or two to look at nature, things change. There is an equation in nature, and scientists literally call it the God equation, that is about symmetry. That if you look at a shell, for instance, and see the symmetry and the math that is actually in a shell that equates to symmetry, it is inspirational. And this equation exists in all living things. So if you look at a flower, there is a calming about it because there is symmetry. There will also be things that aren't symmetrical in nature, right? But if you take a moment and focus on it, there is something that happens in your brain that brings things more into focus. And don't take my word for it, try it. Go out into the yard, pick a blade of grass, or go online if you're in your office and find a picture of a flower that's pleasing to you, a good color, and just take a few minutes. Of course, the breathing that you do while you're looking at it is essential, right? But there is something extra added about having that moment with nature. I think there's something awe-inspiring about the fact that this thing grew and exists and is, and it's beautiful. And it doesn't matter what you look at it, you will, even if it's the ugliest pine cone you've ever seen in your life, looking at it and realizing that this thing exists and grew, you'll find the beauty in it. It will really be fun. And you know what it does? It gives you a vacation from everything you're worried about. And we need to take these mental vacations whenever we can. And it's easy to do because all you have to do is look at it, let whatever thoughts come and go. Don't try to be the thought police. So if you look at it and go, it's a beautiful color, let that be. Even if the thought comes up and goes, I'm bored, let it be. Just let it come and go. If you're breathing, it's still going to be a vacation, and it's still going to be a mindful moment. When we say to ourselves, I'm bored, that's mindful. It's not, what am I going to do? Oh, I got to pay that bill. It's not that treadmill. So don't be the thought police. Let things come and go. And if you find yourself judging your thoughts, go, oh, look at me judging my thoughts. That's mindful too. All right. So give it a try. Mindfulness, meditation with nature. And we can do this with our kiddos too. For some of our kiddos, it's going to look vastly different, but giving them a leaf and brushing it against their hand and having them feel it, using all of their senses to hear what noise does a leaf make. Depends on how dry it is, right? Feeling what it feels like, looking at it with their eyes. It can be a vacation from them. It's very hard to have anxiety while sitting and touching a leaf. Just saying. So try it. Mindfulness, meditation with nature. That's our tip for this week. We are going to take a break now, and when we come back, we're going to be joined by Bonnie Yates, special education attorney. She's going to be answering some questions that you guys sent in. Stick with us. Parent to parent, we all want our children to eat healthily. And it's really important that we're able to introduce new foods to our children, but sometimes that can be really difficult. So I've got a couple of tips for us, ways that we can make that easier. But before I start, I want to remind all of us that if your child's health is at stake, if you feel like your child isn't thriving, or you're afraid that your child isn't getting enough food, it's time to consult a specialist. It's okay to do that. There are trained professionals who can help you to get your child to eat. But if your child is just being a finicky eater and they're picky and you want to introduce new foods, we know, science has shown us that we have to introduce foods many, many, many times. Many more times than you would think you would have to, so keep putting it on the plate. Don't make it a fight, but keep introducing the food over and over and over again. There's also something that's been shown to be scientifically effective, and that's hiding food in other foods that a child likes. There are lots of cookbooks that are out there that give you really interesting ways to do this. But remember that you want to keep increasing the ratio of the food that you're trying to introduce to the preferred food, so that after a period of time, there's more of the food that you're introducing than the other food. And in doing this, you really help your child's taste buds to warm up to a food that they've never tried before. Don't make it a battle, but keep introducing those foods. And remember, if your child's health is at stake, it's time to get professional help. Don't be afraid to do that. It's really effective. Frequently, we ask ourselves, why doesn't my child listen?
This is Logan Shepherd. At first glance, he looks like a typical American teenager. He plays in a band, loves hanging out with his friends, he doesn't like doing homework, and he's not really fond of broccoli. But Logan Shepherd is not your typical 14-year-old. Logan was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. He was nonverbal, made no eye contact, and his parents were told to abandon all hope. Instead, his parents began an intensive intervention treatment. At its center was a quality ABA program known as the CARD method. This is Logan Shepherd now.
All I really want to say is, I'm kind of copying Martin Luther King. I kind of have a dream that one day, I can just, inspire people and never give up. Because, that's what I want to do in life. Because if I can succeed, they can succeed. And I will succeed.
To follow Logan's musical journey, visit www.facebook.com/officialdrummerrock or @drummerrock on Instagram. For more information on the CARD method, visit www.centerforautism.com or call 800-345-CARD. Rock on, Logan.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We are so fortunate because we have the fabulous Bonnie Yates on the line with us on Skype, joining us right now. Bonnie is a special education attorney. She is a fantastic mom and a superlative mom, really. And she is joining us courtesy of the law firm of Hirji and Chow. We are so grateful to have her here. Bonnie, you want to take just a second to talk a little bit about Hirji and Chow and how people can get a hold of them and you?
Absolutely. I'm really fortunate and proud to be a member of Hirji and Chow. We are a 4-attorney law firm. We do special education and disability discrimination. We also do higher education for college students that are, for example, if you have a student that's accused of plagiarism or they have an issue with an accommodation at school. Anyway, basically everything pertaining to education. We've even like dipped our toe in the vaccination controversy. And anyhow, if you want to reach us, we're on the web. Just Google Hear, G-H-I-R-J-I, and Chow, C-H-A-U, and our phone number in Culver City is 310-391-0330, and we'll always offer a free consultation to any parent that thinks their child might need some additional help. So, do you want me to do the disclaimer also? We'll just get
Yes, let's do that, and then we're going to dive into some questions.
We're going to get down on it. All right. So, I'm a California licensed attorney. IDEA is federalized, which means that it applies to the 50 states. There are federal laws that are the same in all states, and then there's California specific laws. So when we're answering questions, we're only referring to those two sources. If you're in a specific other state, or you have a very specific problem, it's probably time to get particular legal advice as to your problem. But the way we answer the questions on the show is we are as specific as we can within the context of a program that's for general education. So you really need your own lawyer if you've got your own pressing problems. So that's our disclaimer. Anyway.
Okay, and I want to say that just before we came live on the air with you, we got an email from a mom, and it's lengthy in nature, and I just want to say to her, we had a bunch of our questions already for today, and that I would like for you, Bonnie, to be able to review the questions. So we're going to put it at the top of the list for next week. I just want to make that mom aware of the fact that we will be doing that, and I apologize that it's not instant gratification, but you next week.
Let's put it out there so our audience knows what's coming. What subject area will we be talking about?
And it's such a long question that there are a lot of different things that are covered in it. But it's about not seeing progress in a school and wanting. I think it's more about placement, but I think you might have some ideas about it too. Maybe there's other things in here that you're going to see as well.
Okay, well, anyway, we've got a grab bag of stuff for next week. For this week, I sent you, Shannon, a disability rights publication on all kinds of answers to questions about assessment. They do great publications, so you can disseminate that to everybody at some point. We're focusing in on one specific aspect of assessment, which is this mom's question.
And I'd like to read that question if I can, so that everybody will know what exactly we're talking about. It says, what are the rules for assessments before an IEP at school? They are saying that they can take her out of class, so I won't even know what day. They won't tell me who the assessor is, and basically they want my 6-year-old to go in a room alone with them to be assessed. A stranger, she says with exclamation point. First of all, I'm trying to teach her stranger danger, and that is exactly a scenario that I would teach her to say no to. But now we're going to teach her it's okay? 2 question marks. Second, isn't this a pedophile's dream? Don't we have some rights to make sure that our kids aren't alone with school personnel? I asked if I could be there. No. Behind a window. No. They don't have a room with a 2-way mirror. Do I have the right to refuse? What are the consequences? Third, they are saying they want to do this during the school day. How does that make sense? They always tell us how important it is not to miss class because they get behind. But now they want to take her out on 3 different days. Can I force them to do it after school? So a lot of questions there, and a lot of concern from a mom of a young 6-year-old girl.
Okay, so we're going to answer the who, when, and where questions that she asked in the context of the California assessment statutes. And I want to say, when I answer these questions, I always have you guys in mind. I always have your back. And I think part of having your back is telling you when your understanding is incorrect, because that's, if you go into a meeting and you don't understand the way the law works, you're going to get, sandbagged. So the who, what, and when the who, where, when of all of this is that no, you don't really have the right to assert most of those conditions that you wanted to. Anything you can work out with the district informally, you can work out. But starting with the assessment plan, parents have a problem with the idea that, and I did too, the first time I looked at an assessment plan, I was like, this doesn't tell me anything. It just tells me the areas, you know. Methodology in special ed is left up to the educators that would extend to testing. So they get to decide what tests they think are appropriate, and then they, you know, there are rules about how they administer them. And you generally are not going to have a parent in the room, although it depends on what kind of assessments are being done. And there's certainly situations in which the evaluator will ask to have, let's say, the ABA therapist in the room because they, you know, they run the risk also of not really being able to see what the person can do because, you know, our kids are going to have, you know, a certain amount of performance anxiety. So before I get to the statute, what I would say is it's unwise for the school to play hide the ball in terms of when the testing is going to occur, because I think most kids would do better with priming. I just had this issue come up in a district recently, and we wrote and said, you know, that we needed to know when the testing was going to be done because we felt like it would go better if we prepared this 8-year-old for assessment. So you don't have the right to you know, get them to tell you exactly where they're going to do it. You don't have a right to stand behind a two-way mirror and watch. I think I'm going to come back to the you know, the child abuse question after we deal with the substantive law. And then what was the fourth question after child abuse? Is this, you know, is this?
Well, she wants to know if she could be there, if she had the right to refuse, and what the consequences would be if she did refuse.
Okay. Well, she doesn't make sure. Hello?
Hi. Are you there? I'm having sound difficulties, but okay, so I wasn't sure if it was me or her, but no, we've got you back now. No, she doesn't have her back. Bonnie, if you can hear me, we cannot hear you. There was like a, oh, and you froze. All right, we'll reconnect. I thought it was just me. I thought it was my little wire. Okay, so hold on to that thought, you guys, because I'm hanging on the end of my seat. I can't wait to hear what she says about this. But while we're getting her back, I just want to say that Sumenthri has written in from South Africa and says that they would like to know more about sensory activities in the classroom and about what workshops that would give them guidance in the class. And I want to say hi to Shakena, who's writing in from Tallahassee, Florida, with an 18-year-old. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And to the person who wrote in about the workshops, we have a new project here that's called Autism in the Classroom, and we have a bunch of speakers. We're trying to put together some workshops, and I'll tell you what's been kicking my can a little bit is that trying to get them all in 1 week is just so overwhelming, as it turns out. And I want to know from you guys, what, for those of you who are interested in autism in the classroom topics, would you prefer that it's like a week long of things and then you can watch them afterwards, or would you prefer them to roll out like, you know, one every Monday? Bonnie's back. Have we got it?
Maybe.
We're checking out her sound. But in any case, write in and let us know what you feel about how you would prefer workshops and how you think teachers would prefer workshops. Because I'm out of the classroom now, and I think it's a little bit different now. So we're seeing if we've got Bonnie back, and hopefully we do. For those of you who are watching, we have this question about assessments, and obviously a mom who's gravely concerned about sending her 6-year-old, it's a loss of control. This is what it all comes down to, right? Loss of control. Sending your 6-year-old in to get tested, and you know what your rights are and what's going to happen, and knowing what's going to happen. So Bonnie, we've got her back. There you are. So sorry about that, Bonnie. Technical issues.
No, I'm sorry too.
It's okay.
where we left off is for an initial evaluation, you do not have to consent. If the district wants to assess you and you refuse, that's it. Okay. Once you're in, though, once you're eligible, they have to do a reevaluation at least every 3 years. Although there's ways that they can abbreviate that, but parents shouldn't allow them to do that. And when they're reevaluating, if you refuse consent for assessment, they have to decide whether they're going to go along with that or if they're going to file for due process and get an order, which they will get, for the right to assess. So that's the way the last part of that works. And I think, I hope I'm not going to disappear off the screen here. Can you see me still or no?
We can still see you, yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so the statute in question that we need to look at is California Education Code 56320. And 56320 is the place that you need to go to look at how they're supposed to do these assessments. So 56320 starts by saying that before any action is taken with respect to the initial placement of an individual with exceptional needs in special education instruction, so this is your first go-round, an individual assessment of the pupil's educational needs shall be conducted by qualified persons in accordance with the requirements including but not limited to all of the following. So what you're getting now are the criteria for a proper assessment. And when we try to attack an assessment as improper so that we can hopefully get the district to pay for an independent evaluation, we go to these criteria and we see if we can attack the assessment on these bases. So the first one is testing and assessment materials and procedures used for the purposes of assessment and placement must be administered so as not to be racially, culturally, or sexually discriminatory. That is a product of the fact that there was a bunch of litigation probably 20 years ago, and it was, or 25, and it was determined that it was improper to do IQ testing of African Americans the way they were doing it in California. This has led to a policy on the part of most districts that they won't do IQ testing in general. They'll use other cognitive assessments. Now, another thing that's in this first paragraph is the materials and procedures shall be provided in the pupil's native language or mode of communication unless it is clearly not feasible to do so. So that would mean that if you had a child that was wholly dependent on sign language or Braille, those would be kind of more extreme examples, you have to administer the testing in their first language. And a whole other topic that I've learned about since I've been at Hirji and Chow, because they do a lot of these cases, is that getting stuff translated into Spanish for monolingual Spanish speakers or people that speak another language is quite cumbersome. So, the parent is entitled to an assessment that they can understand, so it's got to be translated. Anyway, that's a sort of a side issue. Tests and other assessment materials meet the following requirements: are provided in the language and form most likely to yield accurate information on what the pupil knows and can do academically. So we have an assessment. It's actually for an adult. It's a regional center mess, not a special ed mess. But the regional center psychologist who tested a client and wanted to find him ineligible brought his half-brother into the room while he did the assessments, and so he kind of used the stepbrother to make our client be more successful in the assessment than he would have been on his own. So that's what they mean when they say that you have to, you have to administer the test properly. And if you have a kid that you can't really get anywhere with because you can't even get like a basal on them because they're so resistant to testing, that's going to be what the scores are going to be invalidated. But what I will tell you is I almost never have a private evaluator say to me, I couldn't complete the testing. A really good neuropsych has all kinds of tricks in her magic bag, and if one assessment doesn't work, oftentimes, she can use another. So it has to be administered in a language and form most likely to yield accurate information on what the pupil knows or can do academically. Two, are used for purposes for which the assessment or measures are valid and reliable. So that means, you've got to give the right test for the right reason. If you're looking at social emotional, you're going to be using something like the BASC, which is 170 questions about, social emotional functioning. You have to have an assessment that targets the area of need that needs to be, evaluated. Are administered by trained and knowledgeable personnel. So that's another basis for attack. If you have somebody that's not adequately trained or knowledgeable enough about the area in which they're assessing, that's a basis for attack. So are trained and knowledgeable personnel and are administered in accordance with any instructions provided by the producer of the assessments. Now, that means that there's going to be a backup protocol that's like the actual test materials. And sometimes people will do things like they won't write the scores on the test in the way they're supposed to. They won't add things up. They'll write the wrong child's name on the protocol. All those things would allow you to make the argument that the tests were not administered in accordance with the instructions provided by the producer of the assessments.
But Bonnie, let me stop you for just a second. So in order to know all of these things are done properly,
yeah.
we we do have, just to reiterate, we do have the right to know which tests are being done, who's giving it, whether they're somebody who is experienced at giving this test. It sounds like we can know that after the fact, but are we allowed to know that before we agree to it?
Well, you can have any kind of discussion you want with the district, and they can decide whether they're going to entertain it. But before the fact, your assessment plan is only required to indicate the subject areas that they're going to test. Now, if you have a particular assessment in mind and you really want the district to do it, you can certainly ask the district, and they may say, sure, we're happy to do the lighter. Or, we don't think it'd be a good idea to do the, berry butinka, or whatever everybody decides is okay, but there's no obligation. And then as far as the publisher's instructions and things like that, I've just gone online and looked at the publisher's instructions. Sometimes you can call the company. Sometimes the problems that we find are that people are coming up with a score that mathematically is correct, but the interpretation of the score might not be. So somebody has borderline scores or somebody has average scores, and the test results are being interpreted as those values mean they're borderline. That would be a basis for attack too, but you really aren't going to be able to do too much unless the district just wants to let you front load.
Okay.
Your attack is after the assessment.
So
is
it
done.
sounds like before we get a minimal amount of information, and that there's a huge cost if we refuse the tests, and that we really. I'm sorry.
Yeah. If you refuse and you're already eligible, the result is going to be they don't have to provide services.
Right. So we're a little bit behind the eight ball in terms of getting the assessments, but that there's a whole lot afterwards that we can say why the assessment wasn't done properly and should be thrown out if they're denying us services based on the assessment.
Right. Well, the assessment is supposed to form the basis of the at the beginning of the IEP meeting, you look at unique needs when you're doing a reevaluation, and the assessment is supposed to be speaking to unique needs, which lead to goals, which lead to services. So if your assessment is flawed, then your conceptualization of the unique needs will be incorrect, and that's, you got a flawed assessment, that's a big problem for the district. So, the attacking those assessments becomes very important. So the other thing about this sub-paragraph number 3 is that it also says individually administered tests of intellectual or emotional functioning shall, which means it's mandatory, be administered by a credentialed school psychologist. So that goes to the cognitive testing is going to be done by a school psychologist. The academic could be done by the special ed teacher, the resource teacher, or whatever. Tests and other assessment materials include those tailored to assess specific areas of educational need and not merely those that are designed to provide a single general intelligence quotient. So it's not enough to come up with a full-scale IQ. You really are trying to come up with a conception of how the person is functioning academically and cognitively. Tests are selected and administered to best ensure that when a test administered to a pupil with impaired sensory, manual, or speaking skills produces test results that accurately reflect the pupil's aptitude, achievement level, or any other factors that the test purports to measure, and not the pupil's impaired sensory, manual, or speaking skills unless those skills are the factors the test purports to measure. So I think what that's saying is if you're assessing somebody who has impaired sensory, manual, or speaking skills, you need to select tests that allow you to get accurate information nonetheless. So like a nonverbal IQ measure for somebody that's not very verbal, that would be important, and so on. A developmental history, let's see, am I pupils assessed? Oh, I'm sorry. No single measure is used as the sole criterion for determining whether a pupil is an individual with exceptional needs or determining an appropriate educational program for the pupil. So that means we want to get an accurate picture, and we don't think one probe is going to be sufficient. The pupil is assessed in all areas related to the suspected disability. Now, they fall down on this a lot, including health and development, vision, low vision, hearing, motor abilities, language function, general intelligence, academic performance, communicative status, self-help, orientation and mobility skills, career and vocational, and social and emotional status. A developmental history shall be obtained when appropriate. For pupils with residual vision, a low vision assessment shall be provided in accordance with guidelines established pursuant to Section 56-136. In assessing each pupil under this article, the assessment shall be conducted in accordance with Sections 300.304 and 300.305 of Title 34 of the Code of Federal Regulations. So that's the federal, the federal assessment statutory scheme. Next, the assessment of a pupil, including the assessment of a pupil with a suspected low incidence disability. That means, like disabilities that don't occur that often, like if you have a student that's partially deaf or something, shall be conducted by persons knowledgeable of that disability. Special attention shall be given to unique needs, including but not limited to skills and the need for specialized services, materials, and equipment consistent with the guidelines established pursuant to 56-136. We're almost done here. As part of an initial assessment, if appropriate, and as part of any reassessment, the group that includes members of the IEP team and other qualified professionals as appropriate shall follow the procedures specified in Section 1414C of Title 20 of the United States Code. The group may conduct its review without a meeting. I think what they're talking about there is if you have a person that's, being looked at for initial eligibility, when you review the assessments, the qualified, there has to be some kind of meeting between the qualified professionals to consider what the assessment results mean together. And lastly, each local educational agency shall ensure that assessments of individuals with exceptional needs who transfer from one district to another in the same academic year are coordinated with the individual's prior and subsequent schools as necessary and as expeditiously as possible to ensure prompt completion of the full assessment. So that's a bit of a specific situation. So that's kind of the who, when, and where. And then the question about stranger danger, I think that can be addressed by explaining to the evaluator, explaining to the child that, you are going to be evaluated, and, this is an evaluation by a trusted teacher. Sometimes, particularly for the preschoolers, they will assess in a team. They'll have a multidisciplinary team. So your child isn't necessarily going to be alone with the psychologist. But you can see, I read you the statute because you can see the legislature thought that the things that are in the statute are the things that have to be considered and abided by or adhered to. There's nothing in there about stranger danger or the possibility of sexual abuse during testing. And I haven't really ever heard of any, the stuff that goes on during the evaluations that's problematic for us is people cutting corners, administering and scoring tests incorrectly, not looking at areas of unique need because they're in a rush to get things finished and so on. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, because everything happens sometimes somewhere, but our big beef is with the way the tests are administered and interpreted. So that's kind of as much as I think you can do in terms of evaluation. And then there's a whole other piece to this, which is 56.329. And what that has to do with the conditions under which you can have your own independent evaluator come into the classroom and observe, which we could talk about too if people want.
Okay.
But that's kind of a mouthful, so I'm going to stop talking.
Yeah, and then the last part of this question, though, is about can you request them to do it outside of class hours? And in all that you read, did I miss that part of it?
No, there's no rule about when to test a student, but as I said, I've always got your back. I understand you don't want to miss class. At the same time, I don't think it's unreasonable. I really don't. That in the course of once every 3 years or sooner, if you want a reeval sooner, they're going to spend 4 to 8 hours pulling your kid out of class. I think it's necessary. Assuming the assessments are done properly, it should be leading to better academic planning. But again, that would be discretionary. It's up to the school psychologist. Does she want to do it outside of her day? She's probably not going to be paid for it, and that's not going to go over too well. There's one other little piece of business, another basis for attack, and that's in 56.327. The personnel who assess the pupil shall prepare a written report or reports as appropriate of the results of the assessment. The report shall include, but not be limited to, whether the pupil may need special education and related services, the basis for making the determination, the relevant behavior noted during the observation of the pupil in an in an appropriate setting, the relationship of that behavior to the pupil's academic and social functioning, the educationally relevant health and development and medical findings, if any, for pupils with learning disabilities, whether there is such a discrepancy between ability and achievement that it cannot be corrected without special education, a determination concerning the effects of environmental, cultural, or economic disadvantage when appropriate, and the need for specialized services, materials, and equipment for pupils with low incidence disabilities. So another way of attacking the report would be that it doesn't include this information in the developmental history and so on.
Okay. So time-wise, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to. You think we can get to these next two questions, or one of them?
I think one. I think my answers were short.
Okay. So the next question was, we're being told that we have to decide whether our 10th grade son is diploma track or not. I don't know what I'm saying yes or no to. What's he going to lose out on if he doesn't go diploma track? Is it true they don't let them walk for graduation?
Okay, let's answer that first. Most districts let you walk whether you have a certificate of completion or you're actually diploma track. I was approached recently by somebody who said, I want you to help me set up a business. And I said, what's your business? And he said, I'm going to have an internet platform where you can procure a high school diploma for $40. And I said, what's the point of that? And he said, there's a lot of people that want jobs and can't get them because they don't have a high school diploma. So I think the problem with the certificate of completion is, to the extent that he's correct, and certain jobs require a high school diploma, you would be out of the running for that. And we know that that's like a requirement for special education aides and so on. So I mean, I'd say that the differences are the amount of work you're required to complete and the type of work, and then also the vocational implications of not having a high school diploma. I mean, everybody should try to get a high school diploma if it's going to, further their education. There's nothing magic about it. And if you're being, I have a real beef about making people take subjects that they are not able to get anything out of. And you basically do have to be able to pass algebra to graduate from high school. And I don't want to sound like a stick in the mud, but I was not like a great algebra student. I thought it was hard. And I don't really understand how some of the kids that I work with are expected to pass algebra. But, I think they get passed along. So, it's really depending on like what these parents have in mind in terms of adult transition. Where do they see their student going vocationally? It's a pretty general answer to a pretty general question. But if people want more resources about transition, I'm sort of dedicating the next decade of my life to trying to learn more about transition and helping people figure out jobs for their kids. So we're collecting resources all the time about that stuff.
One of the things that I've seen recently is that parents that are on that bubble where they're trying to decide a diploma track or not, one of the considerations is if they don't do diploma track, they get another 3 years of services and a place for their kid to go every day that they don't have to pay.
I should have mentioned that. You're absolutely right. If you graduate from high school, you're done. No more special ed.
Yeah.
If you graduate with a certificate of completion, you can do vocational education until your 22nd birthday. And it's not till the end of that year. It's till your 22nd birthday. So if your 22nd birthday falls in January, that's it for you. You're out.
Yeah. But one of the things that I've been hearing is that parents are like, I'm trying to decide between having them get a diploma or 3 years worth of more education. And I've heard of one family, Bonnie, and maybe you've heard of more, that said, we want to put the diploma on hold, have them do the 3 years of vocational, and so the student got the best of both worlds. They went through the vocational and then graduated 3 years later.
Well, that sounds like the best of both worlds. I haven't actually encountered that. I mean, I've been more involved in just trying to show that when they graduate kids with a high school diploma, a lot of the time it's really unfair and they need more education.
Yeah.
Like the districts, now that we got rid of the high school, proficiency exam in California, they said it's suspended till 2018, but I don't see anybody bringing it back, this week. What we've seen is people being kind of rushed out of high school, and they'll have the ability to read on a third grade level or something. So you have to unfortunately challenge all that stuff post-graduation through a due process, unless you can get the district to meet you halfway. So that's more what I've been dealing with, is just the dishonesty about the notion that this person is really ready to go out into the workforce, given that they grow up.
And then, Bonnie, we've gotten a big question from a parent that is in grave need, I fear. And unfortunately, my iPad died. Hang on one second and see if I can switch to the other one and see if I can bring this up. But it's a mom who a year ago put her son into a program, and now she is finding a residential program in Florida, I believe. And now she has reason to believe that there is inappropriate stuff happening with not necessarily with her child, but other people in that center, and that he's not being well taken care of. His medicines aren't being given. He doesn't have clothes that fit properly. And she's saying, I need help. How do I get my kid out of there? Is this a COPA answer?
Yeah, she needs a lawyer in Florida, and she can find one on the COPA list, www.copaa.net. And that's a very hard situation. My eyes are really wide open when it comes to residential treatment programs, because when there's no eyes on the the sufficiency of the program, I've seen a lot of very bad stuff go down, and I've found that the state of California refused to investigate in a case that I had that involved child abuse at a school in Utah, and they just mothballed my thing. They never did anything about it. So it's really, once everybody's on board, it really takes the right type of administrator to want to rock the boat. Their attitude generally is, once we ship you off, you're somebody else's problem. Don't bother us. But she can make a report to Child Protective Services. She can make a report to the police, and she should certainly put her concerns in writing and have an IEP meeting to discuss this immediately. And I hate that I have to tell you this, but it does happen. I've seen it happen. My client came home with, a fungal infection in his toes. He was over-medicated. He had severe gingivitis of his gums because they wouldn't let him brush his teeth. But they deprived him of food and water. They limited his opportunities to go to the bathroom. And I couldn't even interest the state of California in that. So I'm pretty cynical about all that stuff. I think it's horrible.
And she does say that she has called DCF in the past and that they have been investigated, but she's saying she needs to get him out. So she needs to lawyer up. And as you said,
www.copaa.net. And just really quick,
okay.
copaa.net. Really quickly, too, when we got involved in this particular abuse case, we found that there are websites on the web where kids, like teenage kids, are reporting, they're doing like Yelp reviews of schools, like bad school, here's why. So that there is some information out there also that you may be able to access.
All right. Bonnie, thank you. We'll get to this this other question that we didn't get to today next week, and I'll email you the longer email, both from this mom and the one who emailed at the beginning of the segment. And thank you so much for all your help and support. We really appreciate you. And we do, and it looks like you're frozen, but we want to say again, Hirji and Chow, and that they can contact Hirji and Chow. And is there a number that you want to give them?
Yeah, 310-391-0330.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Shannon.
Thank you. All right, we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Okay, we are running a little bit late, and we have a wonderful guest, Maya Watkins from Zip Zap Zop Enrichment. Stick with us.
A lot of adults don't really believe kids. They think, kids are kids. What are they talking about? But when a child stands up for what they believe in, it's so strong and powerful. I first got involved with autism advocacy 4 years ago when my friend was diagnosed. When I found out about my friend's diagnosis, I didn't really understand what it meant. But it didn't matter to me or change our friendship. I didn't look at her any differently. We still had so much fun together. Now I know that she experiences life a little differently than me, and that's okay. Knowing what she goes through has helped me to understand and be more caring towards other people in similar situations. I got involved with ACT Today because I wanted to do whatever I could to help. They provide options like behavioral therapy, medical care, social skills programs, assistance to military families, and much more. Being there for my friend was my #1 priority. I've been volunteering and spreading the word about the cause via my social media platform because raising awareness is a crucial first step. There needs to be more kids and teens involved to make sure that our voices are heard just as loudly as the adults. You may be small like me, but your acts of kindness are not.
Low, low, high.
You can use specific improv games to help these kids reach goals for the year. It's not an acting class, it's actually to help these children become the best versions of themselves and reach their potential.
The first day he was here, he was a little apprehensive, and then ever since then, he's just loved it. You get this really bright, engagement from him that you don't get with anything else.
Improv is just this fun, inclusive way that adds to what they're learning in these therapies and adds to what they're learning in school. in a simple way, it's just making your friends laugh can be a huge benefit.
Welcome back. In our ever continuing effort to spotlight, and I meant it that way, spotlight things that are helpful to our kids, we have joining us right now via Skype, Maya Watkins from Zip Zap Zop Enrichment. And that's a mouthful, but a fun mouthful. So Maya, welcome to Autism Live.
Thank you.
Let's talk a little bit about what Zip Zap Zop Enrichment is and where it's located.
Yes, Zip Zap Zop Enrichment is located in the Los Angeles area, and we are an organization that teaches improv in schools, after schools, in workshops, in therapy centers, teaching improv as a tool to communicate. It's not, our mission is not to teach improv as an acting class skill, but instead using improv in creative, innovative ways to reach social goals in behaviors.
Well, and of course, I love this. I love this idea. But Maya, maybe tell us a little bit about how you came to a passion for this. Where did this come from for you?
Yes. So my brother, Zach, has autism, and he is 32, and the way he has, even just in the last few years, started to click and expand his social abilities really has blown me away. So growing up with Zach and seeing how having siblings, being in the middle of 5 kids myself, we always played with Zach, and in a way we're doing improv type games all the time, and it was really helpful for him to grow. And then going into early education the way I did and seeing how many children with autism maybe didn't have that opportunity with all the siblings and the growth and the literally letting you apply what you're learning in therapies and speech therapy and behavioral therapy. My brother was able to do that with us, his siblings, and it was so beautiful that I almost wanted something like that for all children. And improv was the perfect seamless tool. I went to Second City and IO West in Los Angeles and studied improv as well as studied early childhood education. And I just saw such an amazing connection because Zip Zap Zop, we do improv. We didn't create improv, we didn't invent improv, but we are really taking improv and using a different intention with the games to reach these goals. And my brother still to this day loves these games and lights up, and I can talk with Zach longer when I incorporate games in our conversation.
Well, I absolutely love this. There's some things about Zip Zap Zop Enrichment that are a little bit different. Talk to us about your directives on inclusion and about price and how you guys do things a little bit differently.
Yeah, that's our mission, because we're a nonprofit organization, so we aim to make affordable classes for all children of all abilities. And in that, we are all, I always say this in a specific way, I really like it, but basically, we provide training and people who are extra support in the classroom if need be, so parents don't have to bring in their own private aides or one-on-ones or whatever you want to call it, which is great. I was a behaviorist for years, and I also have been one-on-one in classrooms in my past, and very much needed in a lot of areas. But with this class, we want this to be the place where they can come, explore, and practice all of these social skills that they're learning in these therapies, but do it with their friends in an inclusive way. So I go into schools with big classroom settings, with children with autism, children without, and we do games and we all connect. I also go after school, same idea, very inclusive. And then on top of that, we do small groups where we're reaching IEP goals. So we're trying to be affordable because we are meeting the children versus making the children and the parents change to meet our class, if that makes sense.
It does, and I absolutely love that. I love this whole model of, so often, you know, and I know we're going to hear from people around the world that they're like, oh, we don't have these classes at all here, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But you know, when here in Los Angeles, there are classes, and there are good classes, and but they're expensive. You know, just going to be honest here, and a lot of times, if you have a kid that, well, I believe that as much as we can, we want to be inclusive, right? But sometimes you have a kid who's not going to be able to take an inclusive class unless, like you said, that they have a one-on-one aid. So now you got a parent who's paying a lot of money to go to a class, plus they have to pay or have it be part of their insurance funding for there to be the one-on-one aid there, which takes away from something else. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And so you're
crazy.
it adds up. And so the idea that you've got inclusive classes to begin with, and that your people are appropriately trained to be not only instructors, but to know how to effectively deal with behavior and shape and mold it back into the exercise, that's a real win-win for parents and for the kids and for the instructors. So we love that. And keeping costs down is always a good thing.
Yeah.
But you mentioned, I'm sorry, what were you going to say? Go ahead.
I just forgot to add about the affordability with my mom. Growing up, she would always try to find camps for us over summer to all be together, because it's also really exhausting driving to like multiple camps for all your children. It's great if they can be in one. So my mom found one camp. She had to search and search and search, but she found one camp who was open to taking my brother on and was open to giving him that extra support. But it was a challenge for sure. So that was another reason why Zip Zap Zop was very important to me.
I absolutely love it. Now, talk to us a little bit about the Play Lab in Pasadena and what that is.
Yeah, oh my gosh, that class is so wonderful. So Play Lab in Pasadena is a very new center it's more typically known for 0 to 5, for babies and parents to come and have a play space and talk and be more for the early education. But then in the evening, that all closes and there's still children there, but you know, kids go to bed and have dinner and all that stuff. So around 4:30 to 6, which is when our class is on Wednesdays, it's very low key. There's very minimal people there. So we have this beautiful big space, this room, where we have an improv class for children who are on the spectrum. And it's a very broad range. We're open. It's an inclusive class. It's called Inclusive Improv. At the current moment, all the children do have autism and all have different goals they're working on, and all have very unique reasons they want to be in improv and enjoy improv. And when I teach that class, it's magic. They are practicing and connecting. There's this goal of perspective, right, with children who have autism and looking at another person's point of view. And I am so excited about, for specifically this one girl is having a lot of epiphanies about perspective, more and more every week. And it's all because of the safe environment we have at this place called Play Lab. And I'm teaching it. We have another very amazing trained special education teacher who comes after she works all day. And it's just so safe and loving, but we're still pushing them, you know, we're still like reaching these really incredible goals, but they don't have very minimal meltdowns, very minimal tension or stress, but they're still reaching these goals, and it's exciting.
It is exciting. A lot of people get into these pockets of therapy where sometimes parents go, well, we're doing speech and OT, and they feel like that's enough. Then there are the ABA parents who are like, well, we're doing ABA, which means we don't do other things. And we talked about this on the show the other day about how people get solidified into these groups. Well, I'm doing RDI, or I'm doing floor time, or I'm doing whatever, and they don't realize the breadth of what is available to them and how some things work in tandem with other things. So where do you see improv fitting into all of that?
That's when I get really excited, that subject, because improv isn't taking away from any therapy. We're not trying to tell people, oh, you shouldn't do ABA or you shouldn't do floor time. Instead, improv adds to those therapies. It is the tool to communicate. It is taking those therapies and applying it in naturalistic ways in a classroom, in a fun, naturalistic way. So I'm excited because I feel like improv could help bridge a lot of that intervention to application, taking all of those very important tools you learn in therapy, but actually putting them into action. Like, for example, in ABA, it's really common for eye contact to be a goal. And to get to that goal, a lot of the times it's just you and a therapist making eye contact. Not saying that shouldn't happen, but why not also take that skill, those goals, and put them in a classroom where there's so many fun improv games that are all about making eye contact in a very fun, natural way.
Absolutely. One of the things that we talk about here is that we have, all of our kids have to generalize. That's the goal. They have to be able to take things that they learn and go out and apply them in new ways. And that I think that improv is one of the best tools to be able to do that. And the phrase that I always use with parents is you got to give your program legs. So you work on something at home, then you got to take it out to the store, and you got to take it out into life, out into the classroom. So improv is a great, safe way to be able to play. It's very reinforcing and for kids to work on all of those goals. So Maya, where can people go to get more information?
That is an awesome question too. We have our website that we're always updating with our community classes, which is www.zipzapzopenrichment.org. And we have just wanted to add, this summer we're putting on a really exciting inclusive camp in Culver City that it's going to be very similar to the Play Lab situation, a very safe, loving environment. And I'm trying to think, are there ways you can reach us? We have a class at Second City that's on Saturday mornings that is very similar to the Play Lab one as well. And it's kind of fun for parents and families to go to Second City because it's just, there's a lot going on there other than our class that's kind of fun for the kids to enjoy. Like the really awesome improv show at Second City is a kid show every Saturday morning, for example. And yeah, I'm trying to think. There's so many things. You got me all excited with that generalization talk because that's like that's what it is. It is what it's all about. It's going into the world. It's being with each other, especially in this world we live in. It's like the more we can connect and love one another, the better.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Zip, Zap, Zop enrichment. For people in Los Angeles, sometimes this will be in their school. If they wanted to come to their school, I imagine they can reach out to you and talk to their school and say, hey, this is the kind of, schools are always doing enrichment programs in the afternoon. You can ask for them to bring Zip, Zap, Zop to your school. Now, is there any, are you looking at branching out and franchising and having Zip, Zop, Zop in other states and other cities?
Yeah, we have some exciting things in the works. Something you had mentioned about not everywhere has these classes, but because we have this curriculum built and we use improv games with the intention to reach these social goals, and I have all of our games written out. I have all the descriptions, but then I also have what it's working on, like eye contact or tone of voice or perspective or spatial awareness. So I would love to use that knowledge and spread the word, spread the love as much as possible. And I don't know if that's going to be starting classes in another state or another part of California, or if it's going to mean really working with therapists and creating these curriculum plans for schools, etc. We're on a fun path. My president of my board, Oscar Madrigal, who has 2 sons with autism and is a special ed teacher with a great nonprofit background, he's awesome, and him and I are constantly thinking of ways to get this out there, because that's what it's all about, is reaching kids and families. So we're going to see it. It's exciting. And about going into schools, we're always expanding the program more and more in Los Angeles. We're at a lot of charter schools, Larchmont Charter, New Heights Charter, Citizens of the World. We're also at preschools, early intervention preschools, and I have a lot of fun going into schools, also taking those small groups and working on goals with IEP goals and whatnot.
Love it. So I'm just gonna put it out there. If there's a parent out there who's like, you know what, I wish this was in my area, reach out to Maya. Go to her website, reach out to her and say, I want to bring this to my area and figure it out with her. So that's, so again, you want to go to Zip Zap Zop Enrichment. It's .org, but can they also get their .com? Because
Yeah,
that's what.
.com works too.
Okay, so .com works.
And they can also email zipzapzopenrichment@gmail.com.
All right, fabulous. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing and for taking the time to be with us.
This was awesome. Thank you so much. This is beautiful. We
right.
speak the same language.
Take care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.
All right, we're going to be back with more Autism Live after these messages. Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, and we're at the ABCs and XYZs of Special Needs Conference. And this year, for the first time, they've got something really remarkable. It's the Entrepreneurial Boutique. These are all items that have been made and are being sold by individuals who have special needs. So we're going to do a little shopping and talk to some of these fabulous entrepreneurs. Come on.
My name is Molly Rarick, and I'm founder of Breed's Gift. We're a nonprofit that serves teens and adults with special needs like Chase here. We were founded in 2013 and serve people in the Conejo Valley, Santa Barbara, and LA.
Our main objective is to give our participants the skills they need to gain a more independent life.
My name is Shelley Cox, and Lisa Zalagi and I are founders of Creative Steps and Create Micro Business Enterprises. And the items that we're selling here today are all made by the clients who have passions about what they want to make, and then they get the profits from what they make after we've paid all of the other expenses.
We are here today because my goal is to be independent, and also I would like to share all my artwork, and I would like to sell.
Thinking about at his young age being a businessman, it's amazing. I cannot be more proud.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We've had such a wonderful show. I want to get to some questions that people have written in, but one of them goes hand in hand with our Autism in the Classroom moment, so we're going to meld those two together. We have a viewer who's asking for sensory tips for in the classroom, and whenever we have an opportunity on Thursdays, I like to give an Autism in the Classroom moment. We're looking at I think we're going to shift to the workshop not all being in 1 week. It sounds like it's so overwhelming for me. It sounds like it's overwhelming for you guys. But in any case, talking about sensory things in the classroom, first of all, we want to start with talking about why. When people talk about, I think it's become such a catchphrase lately, sensory. Well, it's a sensory activity, or and what does that mean, really? We have our 5 senses. And the truth of the matter is that our brains are always taking things in from it's like 5 channels into a soundboard, right? Into our brain. And there's 5 different senses. You and I are hearing, seeing, we're tasting, we're smelling. We are tasting, even in this moment, we're tasting. I saw my dog this morning. I wasn't giving her anything yet, but she knew I was. And before I was even giving it to her, she was licking her chops, right? Tasting it beforehand. We feel things. What did I leave out? We had sound, okay, so we got our 5 senses, and we're taking things in on a regular basis. The truth is we all take these in different percentages. So you might be a visual person, I am, so that means that my visual sense is heightened and everything else is turned down. And I'm gonna see things before I hear them. I'm gonna see them, and I'm gonna be drawn to something more for what it looks like than what it feels like, right? But for different people, those dials are set at different numbers. And a lot of times for individuals with autism, all the dials are turned all the way up to 11. So it's very hard. If you've ever been overwhelmed because you were someplace where it was loud and it was flashing music and there were all kinds of sounds, sometimes at a concert or something like that, and all kinds of smells, and you were feeling something, a lot of times you get overwhelmed and you kind of short out. a little bit because you can't pay attention to all of it. And so you'll either have a reaction and go, I got to get out of here because I'm overwhelmed, or you find a way to turn them all down and fuzz out from all of them, right? Sensory things can be to help regulate and figure out how to turn the dial up on something, or turn the dial down on something, or it can be something that stimulates one of the senses so that we can prevent ourselves from shorting out. And a lot of times in a classroom, I think it's important, it's all going to look different depending on the child, the student, and the age, and what their individual needs are. So for kindergartners, for instance, they can't just sit and attend a lecture. That's not going to work for them. They need more sensory input. They need to be feeling things. They need for what in the visual field they're seeing to change. Otherwise, they get bored and they will start seeking sensory, which means I pull the person's hair next to me, or that I start spitting on my hand and playing on the desk, right? And this is all kindergartners, not just kids who are on the autism spectrum, but kids who are on the autism spectrum have a need for this, what we call a sensory diet, that we want to regularly have something happen that turns one or more of the channels up, down, sideways, whatever it is that we're trying to do. So working in regular breaks, sensory diet, we would not let kids go the entire day and not feed them, right? They're going to get distracted. They're going to fall apart because they need food. Same thing with sensory. So we want to put them on a sensory diet, and we want to be mindful about some kids need touch. So we have brushes for kids, and aides will brush those kids. That's not perfect for all kids, but for the kids that it is perfect for, it helps to reduce anxiety. Other kids, they need to play with something and they have a preference. They like things slimy, or they don't like things slimy, right? So with younger kids, we want to think of that sensory diet. There are some great activities. We feature some of them on our Smarty that are art activities that will stimulate the senses, and that we can work on other things at the same time. We get really tricky. It's a sensory diet activity, but you're also working on fine motor skills. You're working on visual motor skills. We can find all kinds of different ways. One of my favorite sensory activities that's kind of appropriate, really, for kids of any age is to get a bunch of newspaper. And first of all, if you're working with little kids, the first phase of it you would do yourself, where you take and you roll the newspaper up and you kind of put different colored tape around it to make tubes. And they don't need to be at all perfect. In fact, it's fine if they're completely a mess and stuff sticking out and sideways, right? And then, so you've got these tubes of paper that have different tape on them, and then you give them to the children with more tape and paint and let them mold them into different shapes. It's a little bit more stiff than a lot of other medium that you could play with, but it's got more flex to it, that for some kids clay, it's just too much to get it to how they want it to be. They don't have the finger skills, so it's a great moderate skill. Now for older kids, even for teenagers, you could go into a classroom with older teenagers and say that step one, take and roll up your paper and make it into a tube. And so they'll enjoy that, and the rolling, you're working on those hand skills, and the tape, totally different skills. It really involves some executive function skills, and then get them to mold, and they can either tape it into place, or older kids can, if it's safe enough, you can be using hot glue and they can paint it. They can make giraffes. They can make ashtrays. They can, obviously we don't want ashtrays. That's so 1962. I can't even believe I said that. But you know what I'm saying. So that's just one example of one sensory activity. There are endless amounts, and we'll feature them here on the show from time to time. But thinking mindfully about how much of a break are they getting. even for teenagers, we want to be really specific with them, because if you're trying to teach a teenager how to sit through a boring lecture on a subject that they don't like and stay present and in tune, there are lots of tricks that we can give them that executives do, that if you start to get bored and feel yourself getting a little sleepy or a little out of touch, you know, do some hand massage for yourself. Sensory input, right? That helps to make you be able to listen, because it's getting a little visually boring just watching the lecture, right? You know, stretching your feet. Right now I'm doing circles with my feet underneath the desk. Taking a little stretch. This is all sensory input that's a little bit older that we can give our teens. So we'll talk more about that. But just to give you a soups on, because I'm not sure what age group you're working with, but write back and tell me. Now I got to touch on, Erin has written in a couple of times. Erin says on YouTube, I'm 40 years old with autism, and I just started living with roommates on my own. It is very hard. How do you make living by yourself easier? And then he further wrote in and said, I tried for months, some help. No one has ever tried to help me like you have. Well, Erin, I got to tell you that living alone isn't for everyone. Some people find that they need to live with roommates, that it just works better for them, that to come home and be alone is something that's really hard, and there's no shame in that. And that is not just people who are on the autism spectrum. I know people who do not have a diagnosis of anything and do not like living alone and prefer to live with roommates. Living with roommates is a different kind of hard, because it's having to deal with other people's stop and go buttons, right? That people all have sensory issues, whether they're on the spectrum or not, things that bother them and things that they need, organizational things that they need or that they don't need. And I think that whether, you know, if you're just at the beginning of living with other people, it's important to give it what they call the college try, to see, because it's always going to be difficult, right? But to see whether it's extraordinarily difficult or whether it's just difficult enough that it's worth all of the things that you have to go through to have that companionship, right? But one of the things that I know from years of living with different people is being clear about what the things that you need are, being absolutely clear about it, and asking them what do they need, and then being mindful of their needs. Respect breeds respect. So if you need it quiet at 9 o'clock, being able to sit down and have a roommates meeting and saying, hey, I really needed to be quiet at 9 o'clock. That's something that's super important to me. I'm willing to trade some other things. What's important to you? And if they say, well, you know, it's really important to me to play my music as loud as I can at 11 o'clock, it becomes a discussion of, well, is it something that you can make do with headphones? Or do I need to invest in noise canceling headphones that I can go to bed at 9 o'clock, right? You got to get a little problem solving on it. Sometimes you'll see this is not the right roommate for me. We cannot meet. There's no way to problem solve. This isn't going to work. Other times you'll go, oh, I will do this for you if you will do this for me. They might say, I'm willing to put my headphones on at 9 o'clock when you go to bed, but I need for you to take care of your dishes in your sink at least once a day, so that once a day we have a clean sink. Everybody has their thing. And sometimes when you can trade things, great. Now, if it's that you want to live on your own and that you don't want to have roommates, that becomes about a couple of different things. Being able to financially afford that, which is a whole other discussion, and being able to demonstrate that you have the ability to be alone and to be safe while you do that. I think that it's just a matter of learning the protocol of what you have to do to live alone if that's truly what you want. Some people prefer that, others not so much. Erin, we really appreciate you watching the show. Okay, we're out of time, but we've got less than 1 minute, but I want to say thank you to all of our guests. This was a really wonderful show, and I so appreciate it. I'm sorry that we didn't get to more of the comments that you guys wrote in about. Please continue to write to us. We're continuing in our effort to hopefully get more of your questions answered during the live show, but we can continue after the live show. And want to say that we'll be back next week. We've got big shows coming up for you. Oh my gosh, you guys, so exciting. So I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.